Stories will naturally evolve as the plot progresses. The same is true for the characters involved. As they influence how the story unfolds, the story influences them as well. This is reflected through individual character arcs. When diving into a character, we must pay attention to 4 things: who they are at the start, who they are by the end, how they are affected by the story, and how they themselves affect the story back. In this character profile, we will be examining one of the game's protagonists, Beth Wilder. Due to the nature of Quantum Break, finding a good place to begin for her is tricky. To properly discuss the theme her character presents, I believe it is best to begin chronologically rather than our first encounter with her in the narrative. Beth was born in Riverport, Massachusetts, and at the age of 8 received a notebook from an older version of herself. The writings within revealed events that would happen over the next 17 years of her life. It informed her that she would be instrumental in saving the world and gave her detailed instructions on how to prepare. One by one, these predictions came true. 2 years after this pivotal point in her life, one of the major prophecies solidified her belief, one that had a profound influence on her, like it did for many of us.
This just in from reports this morning. As we come on now, we have serious news of a major, very tragic in the United States.
Despite having advanced knowledge of 9/11 and attempting to warn others, the planes crashed as predicted. A 10-year-old Beth felt the pain of this failure and used it to fuel her actions from that day forward. In her own words, "This is the event that will finally make you believe. Any doubt you had will disappear. You're ready to take on this mission." For the next 15 years, she prepared for the events of October 8th, 2016, the day of the university time experiment. This brings us to the beginning of the game and when she meets Jack. While this backstory is a mystery until Act 4, it gives us the basis for her character. We now know who she was at the start of the story. Beth Wilder is a woman with knowledge of the end of time and the events that lead to it. This prophetic journal informs her that she is a central figure in preventing this calamity. Spending her entire life leading to this meeting with Jack at the start of the game, she's a character fueled by an ironclad resolve and unshakable faith. This is the benefit of knowing the future. Nothing is left to chance. One form of anxiety involves uncertainty of the future. Beth does not have this problem. At this point in time, she is confident in everything she does. Even if some of the details are cloudy, the journal gives her faith everything will work out. Because in her own words, "That woman who came to see me seemed like an angel, a limitless source of wisdom, gifting me with purpose." This invulnerability stemmed from the notebook and the sense of purpose she received from it. The wisdom from her older self, however, was a facade. Without realizing it, the girl placed her faith in a woman who lacked the same resolve she felt. To again quote from her journal, "Now I was that woman, trembling, a lump in my stomach, nervous as hell. It didn't matter, I knew she was too young to see those things on my face. I gave her the notebook. I told a small child to give up those simple pleasures to pursue a life that would bring nothing but pain and hardship. I promised her that it would all be worth it, that she would make a difference, that she would save the world. She believed me."
I've spent years in denial about what I saw, about its inevitability. This is our destiny. The good and the bad, intrinsically tied to this path. No matter whether we succeed or fail.
This is the difference between Beth at the start of the game and the Beth at the end of the game. One was full of hope, the other had none. This little thing called hope had a profound influence on her characterization. And frankly, that's all it takes sometimes. If we don't have the confidence that our actions matter, that our efforts will lead to a better situation, then why try? This mental trap is entirely in our heads though. What it actually leads to is stagnation, a refusal to do anything for fear of failure. This lack of hope was experienced by two characters in Quantum Break. Both of them suffered this loss, and the same triggering event caused it. This event is tied to the third question: how did the story affect the character?
I've spent years in denial about what I saw, about its inevitability, the end of time. I wanted to believe maybe Jack was right. Maybe all this could be undone. Erased. I looked for proof. A loophole. Something. I failed. I failed every time. Every time I tried to make things right. This is our destiny. The good and the bad, intrinsically tied to this path. It can't be bent. It can't be broken.
The end of time was a pivotal moment in both Beth and Paul's lives. Simply visiting this hell meant that it exists, and therefore cannot be stopped. In the previous video on Paul Serene, we discussed the reaction he had to this event. While hope of stopping it was gone, he coped by simply replacing this goal with another. Not to stop it, but to fix it after it had begun. In this sense, he replaced one hope for another. Beth had a more difficult time. For 11 years, what little resolve she had eroded. By the time Jack returned back in time to meet her, she was a completely different person. For Beth, the moment she stepped into the time machine, all advanced knowledge was wiped away. This was brand new territory. Imagine having your entire life laid out for you. Every step and misstep recorded so that nothing was a surprise. Then out of nowhere, that knowledge is stripped away. The certainty and resolve lost. Thrown into uncharted lands with no map to guide you. Every step Beth takes from here on forward only reinforces her greatest fear, that the end of time is inevitable, that there is nothing left to be done, that she willingly destroyed the happiness of her younger self, sacrificed all of those years, and it was all for nothing. That is who Beth has become when Jack returns to the past and found her on the day of the fracture. All of this only gives us the first 3 data points. What we have left is to examine how Beth and her actions impacted the story. Her presence left both large and small ripples in the narrative. Smaller ripples involve being a guide for Jack, potentially saving Will's life, and in one timeline helping Jack escape from a Monarch interrogation room. She was instrumental in releasing Jack from the back of the van and abducting Dr. Amaral. However, her largest contribution to Quantum Break's story is arguably the greatest tragedy. In the Bradbury Pool Diner, she teeters on the edge of giving up until Jack gives her a little push to join him in retrieving the countermeasure. It is an irony that Beth's ability to reclaim even a small sliver of hope in this scene leads to her death. By joining Jack to the Ground Zero site, she was able to reclaim the CFR, but at the same time, it put her in direct contact with Paul. If Beth had succumbed to her all-encompassing doubt, she would not have been there. In all likelihood, Paul would have arrived first and retrieved the countermeasure with no confrontation. And by extension, the fracture would never have occurred. This confrontation is what directly led to the fracture in time. The greatest tragedy of Beth Wilder is this: her entire life was devoted to preventing this fracture. Instead, she became a key figure in causing it in the first place. By clinging to the shattered fragments of her hope, she caused what she most feared. Beth took this horrifying thought to the grave as Paul put a bullet in her head. Quantum Break's rules of time travel will ensure that no matter what happens, this event will always play out. Regardless, we are left with the desire to defy these rules and bring her back. We are left with this faint sense of hope that maybe Jack can find a way to save her. But based upon everything we know, this is impossible. Or is it?
I'll come back for you.
The events of Ground Zero caused a side effect. Jack and Paul can point towards this incident as their second dose of high-intensity chronon radiation, the same radiation that gave them their powers during the university incident. But Beth was there too, exposed to the same radiation. In Martin Hatch's untitled note, he says, quote, "There are other shifters, you, your best friend, who is now your mortal enemy, Dr. Kim, others, some of whom you know. It doesn't matter who because they are gone, and when they emerge, if they ever emerge, they will not be who they were." Is it possible that exposure to the Chronon field caused her to shift in the same way Martin Hatch does? We see him killed multiple times and keep coming back. While this version of Beth may have died, maybe another version can step forward, made possible by the very fracture she caused. If this is true, then she may be able to return. To date, there is no information that the fanbase will ever get a Quantum Break 2. But if the story is ever allowed to continue, I wonder if this loose plot thread will be pulled. However, to echo Hatch's words, who would Beth be if she ever shifts back into reality? Friend or something else? Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please drop a like and subscribe to receive updates on future uploads. If you would like to help support the channel, a Patreon has been set up and the link is in the description below. Have a great day and peace be with you all.